Welcome back. I brought my chief on board just to give you a small introduction into what goes on. Remember, happy wife, happy life. But no, not because of that. I brought her on so that we could do a little bit of a round table, red table, glass table, whatever you want to call it, discussion. And these are the kinds of things that every husband and wife, every family does. I thought you would find it insightful coming from us, because we have to deal with a lot of the same issues that everyone else does, and some unique ones as well. So this gives you an insight into our world. Go ahead, hon.
Yeah, a lot of times, because we are on screen, we always want to be at our best physically. We want to look fit, we want to be fit. And also because, we have to wear different kind of costumes and we want to look good in those costumes. I think that pressure is also felt by, every woman, because they all want to wear whether Western or pants, or they want to wear all these kind of clothes, and they want to always be slim and fit, and all that. And so what happens is sometimes we get into the wrong we go through a wrong turn saying that, okay, let's do some fad diets. And then how many of my friends have done like the watermelon diet or the pineapple diet, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? First of all, I can never do that. I can never just be on a pineapple all day, or just do you think these diets are practical to do?
Yeah, it's a great question, and everyone's asked me as well. I would say a couple of things. First of all, you're all beautiful. It's how you feel, not what you look like, that matters
so
to
true.
any of us.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that completely.
And the interesting part is we face this crazy world where there's expectations in front of the camera and on the street, and people resort to some crazy comments, and you're just like, why? So what I'm going to say is, right now, there should be some dignity with which we live our lives, and it's how you feel that matters, not how you look. All right. That aside, though, if you feel great, chances are you're going to look great too. So with regard to the diets and all that, we've tried so many different things on my patients over the years. And, when you're training, you learn quite a few things to take care of your surgical and your ICU patients, where we have strict formulas that kind of dictate how many calories, how much protein to give them. And it's based on their genetic code and their comorbidities. Like if they have kidneys that don't work, you can't load them with high protein because the kidneys will shut down. And similarly, if they're in some types of bad emphysema, you don't want to give them a huge carbohydrate load. And so the idea is you have to mix and match. But now you take that to the real world, and you see all these fad diets, and you see this and that. What I would say is this, that ideally, it's about paving a lifestyle for everyone, and getting something that is sustainable. But with that said, there are periods in your life, and I'm guilty, I think all of us are, in that we eat too much, we don't realize until it's too late, and we end up gaining some weight. And you get
this happens usually
punch
during festivals.
Yeah, like what we just went through,
and
right?
Diwali, and there's so many actually festivals in India that at every festival you are just like slammed, because you are tempted to eat all kinds of stuff, and you say, it's okay, we can eat once in a while. And then once in a while becomes like, okay, just 2 days, just 3 days. And by the end of the holiday, you stand on the scale and you go, oh my God, what's happened?
And I would say, to go one step further, it doesn't have to be a festival for me. The food in India is like mind-blowing. And I'm a total foodie. And you go north, south, east, west, there is no shortage of amazing, amazing dishes. And so, you want to try stuff, but that if you don't do it in moderation, you're going to pay for it later. It's like, as they say, a taste on the lips is like months on the hips or whatever. Again, it doesn't matter, right? That part's not important.
So I think moderation is the underlying thing.
Yeah.
But you have to have everything in moderation. Like a lot of people, they want to diet and they don't eat at all. Like they'll stay hungry for a whole day, or they'll just eat one particular thing that day. And I can't do that because I have migraines and I'll start getting a headache, and that's it. I won't be able to work. So I guess one has to look at within ourselves how our makeup is, and then decide what kind of diet you can do. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's some basics, basic strategies that work. eat a balanced diet. Make sure you have the different food groups. Make sure that you are, spacing them out appropriately. Don't go hungry. Because what I find is when you go hungry and you end up then waiting
too
long,
and then
your eyes are way bigger than your stomach. And like I've said before, because we're Indians, we don't want to waste anything. And so you put all this stuff on your plate, next thing you know, you've eaten all that stuff because you're being, true to your grandmothers and your mothers and not insulting them by leaving anything on your food plate. But I would say the buffet style mentality is not a healthy one. Certain professions would have donuts and coffee because they would get a quick pick-me-up. The truth is your sugars go so high with the donuts, and then you follow it with a huge insulin spike from your pancreas, which senses the sugar, and then you get this profound drop in sugars. So in actuality, you actually feel sleepier after you eat the donuts and coffee. And the coffee acts as a stimulant, so it even accelerates some of the process. And so you actually feel sleepier after that. So I think there's two components to it. One is how you want to live so you can be most productive. And actually three components. The second is being very conscious of your ideal body weight and what you want to do. So if you're very active, you're running a lot, you need a lot more carbs. If you're building muscle, you need more protein. If you are working for a long period of time, I would say protein or fats work a little bit better because they have more energy and burn slower. And so you can go a longer period of time without eating, like when you're on the sets or whatnot. By comparison, if you're sedentary, and what I find nowadays in the pandemic, it's awful. You sit in front of the TV and you feel like munching. That is like a deadly combo, guys.
That's so true. And when you're at home, you're just in your home, whether working, but you're still in your home. And then after like an hour or so, you feel, what should I eat now? And you go into the kitchen and you find yourself something to eat, munch on. And it just goes on all day, which is like, oh my God. And then at breakfast, you're thinking what's going to be the lunch. At lunch, you're thinking what's going to be for dinner. And you're not getting out of that cycle because you're not getting out of your house.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I felt a lot when we were in the lockdown. But I really wanted to ask you that a lot of diets have been floating around, and a lot of people have been talking about keto diet. What is your take on this diet?
So let's talk about that. A keto and an Atkins are very similar, and the fundamental thesis is you put people into a starvation state, and what happens in a starvation state is you switch to ketone body homeostasis. In other words, you use ketone bodies, which are fat basically, to burn for energy. And so what happens is when you're starving, the first thing that'll happen is any sugars in your liver stored in glycogen will be broken down first.
By starving, you mean because you're eating, right?
Well, no.
So what are you starving?
What I'm kind of giving you as the basis that the background of this is it mimics a lion's diet.
Right.
In that lions eat very sporadically. They can go 2, 3, 4, 5 days before they get their next meal, and yet they function. And what happens in them is that they are in intermittent starvation states, if you will. So what a keto diet does is it's 70% fat, 20% protein, and 5% or less carbohydrates. And effectively what it does is it forces your body to switch over to ketone body homeostasis or functioning. Now, why is that an issue? Because certain parts of your body, like your brain, depend on glucose. It can use some of that through either gluconeogenesis, where you produce new sugars, or it can use the ketones to some degree. The heart can use either, and the kidneys can switch as well. The muscles, interestingly, use glucose too. And so correspondingly, that's also why in diabetics, if you increase your activity, you get more peripheral uptake of glucose and use of glucose because the insulin receptors go up, and so it binds and it takes it in. Anyway, back to the keto question. Like many of these diets, it will work. And when you
Yeah,
initially...
I have tried it and it does work, but you cannot continue with it for a long time. Like I keep going on and off, on and off. So if I have something important to do and I know that I have to, keep myself healthy and fit, and so then I go on to it, and then once I'm done with that, then I come off it and I include a little bit of fruits into my diet. Sometimes while I'm working, while I'm on the sets, I kind of include some of the fruits which I'm not supposed to eat, but I do eat them because I know I'm going to be active enough that I can kind of burn them while I shoot. But is it okay to do keto like long term, or is it for short term, or how does it?
It's a great question. We have both tried keto on patients. I've tried Atkins as well as tried it in real life. We've tried many of these diets. A lot of my patients were morbidly obese, hence they came to me with heart disease and other things. And when I operated on them, the risks of having complications with their wounds was significantly higher if I kept them at that weight. So I would put them on these diets to try to improve their wound healing capacity and also improve their nutrition long term to keep them, away from me, so to say, even though I love taking care of them. But back to this question, I would say the biggest problem with keto is when you restrict the carbohydrates, you're taking out some of the essential vitamins. You're potentially taking out some of the essential carbohydrate sources, and also some of the other fiber and bulk forming agents. So what happens as a result of that? Well, one of the things they knock off are fruits in your diet. And it's been clearly shown that fruits and the pectin in the fruits and the fiber in the fruits and vegetables to that degree are helpful in digestion, as well as providing substance for your bowels, and can reduce the risk of colon cancer and things like that. Now, we don't know that that will go up because of keto. But what I can tell you is that if you're working out, for instance, on a strict keto or strict Atkins diet, it can be very challenging because you just don't have enough carbs. You run out of steam fast.
Right.
The other thing is with the keto and the Atkins, which we found was that when you hit bottom, your protein level, your sugar levels and the ketone persist, but when you hit bottom, you go straight down. And so you really feel run down. You have to get some protein back on board or fat back on board. Now, I will tell you one other thing. They're very addictive in that you can eat all the things they tell you not to eat. You want to eat something with butter, put lots of it, because that's okay on a keto diet. I would say long term, that's not the best of habits, right? And so the interesting part is, with Atkins in particular and keto also, that at a year's time with these diets, they were shown to decrease heart risk. They were shown to decrease weight and keep it off. And so you can sustain them. But I find it's very difficult if you're trying to do any other type of activity.
So if you're restricting a certain kind of food into your diet, you're not eating that and you're eating everything else, would it be a sensible thing to add multivitamins and those kind of things to your diet so that you kind of recover for or cover for whatever you're not eating?
Sure. So I would say multivitamins are essential. And in addition to that, fiber is essential because you'll get horrible constipation, something we don't like to talk about. But on these high protein, low carb or keto diets, you tend to not have enough fiber on board. And so you will get constipated if you're not careful. And then I would say you need to keep a close watch on a couple other things. It's interesting, but something called uric acid can go up. Mm-hmm. And uric acid can cause gout. But the interesting thing about keto is that it actually reduces the amount of inflammation for whatever reason. And as a result of that, even though the uric acid may be elevated, these patients generally don't get gout. But the one thing with keto is, given the protein level you're at, you have to keep a close watch on the kidney function. Right. You have to make sure that this patient doesn't have existing kidney problems.
So someone who has existing kidney problems, maybe keto is not the best kind of diet for those people.
So I would say definitely not a high protein, low carb. Keto is mostly fat, right? But you're still in a ketone body homeostasis or metabolism. And so I would say if you're gonna go on one of these diets, do it under doctor supervision if you have any comorbidities, because I don't think it's a smart move to not monitor some of these. And generally when we put patients on them, we would always get their labs and follow them closely. the other thing we would follow is their body fat, and we would follow their weights, and we would follow their measurements to make sure that they were achieving it. And, vanity aside, right? Great fitness is just not for looks only.
Yeah.
It's to really prevent a catastrophic problem long term. And so, for everything you've done, I mean, you're in great shape. And you bang up your knees with the dancing and all the other stuff. But I would say you've kept yourself in great shape. And I think most of that is just from discipline. So I would say the bigger part, keto and all that, will give you a boost.
Yeah.
And
But
all of these
most
diets
important thing is discipline.
Yes.
And keeping that discipline.
Yes, and
throughout.
I would, in my opinion, I
Which
think
is-
you could use the keto, you could use any of these diets, but most of the data suggests that the long-term recidivism, meaning patients going back to a higher weight, is much higher with the quote-unquote fad diets than by just
See, also,
staking to
I
it.
think for people who are working and they have to cook and then go for their work and they come back and they cook, I think for them it becomes very hard to cook different stuff for different people, right? They want to make something that's common, everybody can eat in the house.
Yes.
And if you're on a keto, then you have to make special something for yourself, and then you can't put your kids on keto, so they're eating something else, and it's very hard for them to manage. So I think a very sensible moderation kind of a diet, I think, is best for them. Everything in moderation, whether it is carbs or just keep your diet balanced and in moderation.
So I think these are great points. And I would go one step further and say, look, the best way if you're a little overweight is to keep a journal of what you're eating, what your activity is, and what kind of problems you're facing. And then just watch and measure your weights and your sizes. And then the second thing is to keep a long-term and a short-term plan. And be realistic about it. Take some good pictures of yourself every day.
Then
or whatever.
I think being realistic is the bottom line. Like, not everybody is built the same way. Everybody is different. And I think we should celebrate that people are different.
Yeah, I agree.
But not at the risk of your health. So you cannot say, oh, I'm like this, but you're unhealthy and you have diabetes and high blood pressure and all that. I think you have to make sure that you are fit internally. And then externally is, it just shows, it will show, right? If you're eating a proper diet, because exercise does help, but I think it's 80% diet. What you eat is what you are. And so, but I think there are also other things, other than diet or comorbidities like thyroid and, stuff like that where it makes you put on weight. And, the women kind of issues. That also can make you put on weight and stuff like that. So I think you have to get all that under control and make sure that you have first addressed all these things, why you're putting on weight. And then you go on to, say, a proper diet, which is suitable for how you are built.
So you don't need a doctor
Right.
here. You've already got one. But I think the bottom line is that
No, that's what I gathered from him and from all the talks that I hear.
your level of understanding of this is amazing, because I think that's what we want to convey to the people at home.
Yes.
We'll give you links. We'll give you background information, and would love to hear your comments on what your experience has been. But I would say the best approach, not a short game. And if you haven't taken anything away from this talk, I would say the biggest thing that both of us advocate is it's how you feel.
Another question I have for you. A lot of people work in offices, they travel a lot, they're in trains, cars, rickshaws, buses, whatever, for hours on end, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes.
Yeah.
So what's a good snacking option? Like, what are good snacks to have?
Yeah, so my feeling is it depends on how often you are doing it, and really what your access is to clean water and vegetables and things like
Right.
that. But, in India, things go bad pretty quickly, so cutting up carrots or celery or something, having that there is sometimes difficult. You can also use different types of nuts, which have high protein in them, or you can use some grains. You're almost like one of these grazing animals, if you will, that every couple hours you're feeding yourself and trying to maintain that.
But it's like sometimes, they don't get home in time,
Yeah.
and they're hungry in wherever they're traveling in. And so I think even our singdana, like the basic, stuff like a singdana is great. It's a great snack as long as you just have like anything that fits in your palm. I think that's
So
how much you should
that's
eat.
the key, because
You
most
can't
of us,
afford
when
to-
we can't just eat one, you start eating and you don't stop, right?
Yeah, or you could have, like you said, carrots or
Yeah,
veggies,
like 5
some sort of,
almonds or something like that,
Yeah.
or a piece of fruit or whatever. I think
Just a fruit, an apple, or just a banana. I mean, that's a great snack
yes.
because it's great for you and it keeps the hunger because it fills you up.
And that's not to say for a challenging role
Yeah.
or for a time when you needed to drop weight, like when I needed to drop it because of my back. I had to stay on course with a very tightly scripted diet and had to be focused, so I had to knock things out. You would hope that you don't have to do that very often, that you could basically make this work all the time. But the issue is, let's face it, this is life. It goes on. And, living in an Indian household, your grandma and your mom's like, ka, 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 just keep eating. And the bottom line is, it's kind of impolite to say no. I mean, it's like an Indian wedding instead at most people of our houses, where they just keep serving you until you put the thing up. It's very interesting. In Brazil, they have a little churrascaria where they have a paddle with red and green. And you have to put up the color of red in order for them to stop serving you. Otherwise, they keep serving you. I feel like that at the Indian weddings, or even in the home sometimes, where they keep serving you because it gives them pleasure to see you eat.
Yes, because you're the guest, and they have to treat you the best possible way, and that's their way of showing love and affection, and everything. But now things are changing. I think everybody is very cautious, very conscious of what
Yeah.
they're eating, and I'm talking about even people who are older. They are taking cognizance of the fact that you have to eat healthy. And you can see a change in people. Now, if we have guests at home and if we get mithai or something, it just sits in the fridge because nobody eats it.
Which
And-
I've never heard of in an Indian home. I mean, most
No,
Maharashtrians
it
and
happens now. It
Gujaratis,
happens, yes.
yeah, they have a
absolutely
sweet
happens.
tooth beyond belief. And that's another one. So that we've discovered in the past, I would say 5 years, sugar has become the enemy.
Oh, yes. I was just about to.
And the issue is, it used to be high cholesterol. Well, cholesterol's kind of gone out the window to some degree, unless you have a family history or whatnot. Sugar is now the enemy. So the encouragement is not to eat or to reduce the amount of refined sugars.
Yeah. So you can have like jaggery, sugar made of jaggery, or
natural fruit.
Yes,
Yeah.
natural fruit.
I mean, you can even use fruits to sweeten your stuff. The other thing is, and this is an interesting one, that if you stop taking sugar in your tea or your other stuff exogenously, the data suggests that after 7 to 21 days, your taste for it decreases. And it is habit forming and it's mind bending. So it's some of the rules which are interesting, that your hardwire is not hardwire, it's softwire. You can change that.
Yeah.
But I think you really have
But
to.
if you have just 2 cups of tea in a day and you just have a little bit of sugar in that, is that okay, or
It
it's better
depends,
to go
right?
on
It
alternatives to
depends.
sugar?
I would say that if you have a history of diabetes, or you have a family history of diabetes, so we're going to talk about that in one of our episodes.
Mm-hmm.
A family history or type 2 diabetes is incredibly worrisome because it can be transmitted down and inherited. And so I would say you learn those rules early and often. We teach our kids not to eat refined sugars. I'll tell you one thing in the US, which we don't see as much here, is carbonated drinks with sugar.
Oh my God, how much sugar is in that? Like 29 grams of sugar in each
Yeah,
can
keep pouring
or
the
something
teas.
like that?
Anywhere between 10
Yeah.
and 13 teaspoons of
Wow.
sugar.
That's
And
like
when you think
crazy.
about that, that's a huge amount of sugar in a very small volume. And if you have 2 or 3 of those, you're in big trouble. Now, is a Diet Coke or a diet drink better? I don't know. Depends on who you talk to. I would hate to find out later that these sugar supplements would give you something else. Right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying that if you don't need it, just rely on natural stuff. Truthfully, I mean, you would have to spend all day in the gym practically to counteract the
amount of
effects of
calories you
eating,
eat,
yes, a healthy diet. I mean, a non-healthy diet. So I would say the bigger part of your discipline should be focused on your diet, and then you should do
And the workouts.
150
So a nice
minutes.
balance between a good diet and working out.
Yeah, and I would say 80% diet, 20% workout.
Working out.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope this has been like helpful to you guys.
Well, was it helpful
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah, I mean, just talking
You kind of
here
lived
and
this, so you just
yeah,
wanted to
we think
tell
about
them.
it every day, and we are talking about it. Also, because of the profession in which I am, everybody's talking about it on the set. So there's a lot you kind of learn from different people. Also, because when you talk to them, you realize, oh, this is the things I should be doing, and this is something I should avoid. I don't want to do this, And I think everybody has to decide for themselves what is good for them. And always, always, always consult your doctor before starting any diet. Make sure that all your, now he will be able to tell you better. I'm sorry.
She's taking my lines. It's awesome. I don't need to say it. She's heard them so often from me at home. But I think she's absolutely right in that you got to be careful, right? You know what your health is. You know what it isn't. But there may be things you don't know about.
Yeah.
And so it's worth seeing a doc before you start any journey or expedition. And then, talk to someone with knowledge, like a nutritionist, and do your homework. And you'll find the same things. We're going to give you a lot of references, and we can guide you through some of that. But I think it's your journey, and we want to empower you to walk along the right path. And we're there with you, walking it at the same time, listening to you and trying to figure things out.
So please like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon.
And leave your comments below. We'd love to hear about what more you want to learn about. It's great talking to you as always, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Love you. Bye.